Welcome to the Survivor's Cocktail. This is a salute to every survivor showcasing two different stories each week, but with a twist. However you connect with the outside world, find us and follow along each week for visuals, audios, and more.
We won't leave you thirsty. Follow us for themed episode cocktails
and mocktails. Survive and thrive, ladies and gents.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Survivor's Cocktail. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Taylor. This week's episode is called Subsist, Fizz. Do you know what subsist means?
I do not.
So it means to keep going or to literally live. It's a verb. I was actually looking for the cocktail name and kind of racking my brain, and I finally used a thesaurus, which is a great tool. And
nice.
It expanded my vocabulary at the same time, so I love it. So this week's cocktail is a mimosa, but with a little bit extra. And we added some red wine, but if you want to see the whole cocktail video, you guys know where to find it. YouTube, Facebook.
Oh my gosh, you could tune into Instagram, Twitter. Also, the mocktail recipe. This week has one of the best mocktails I think we've done.
I was very excited when I was shopping and I found this. I found a red grape sparkling cider, and it kind of went hand in hand with our cocktail. So
perfect.
Very excited about that. You guys will not be missing out if you're drinking the mocktail.
Yes, and if you're following our social media, you may also see that our tote bags finally arrived.
You guys!
They are beautiful, they are wonderful, and they are on their way to you so soon. If you haven't already liked our Facebook page, or if you haven't already dropped that jot form to give us your details, do so now so we can get these tote bags out to you, because we want you to have them as much as we want to have them.
Also, we have 50 more to give away, so if you forgot to tell a friend about it, that's all right. You still have time.
Yes. So tell your friends, and make sure you go and follow us on all of our social medias to keep up to date with everything else that's coming out.
100%. Yeah, we actually have more swag coming down the pike, which I'm really excited about. We got to see some samples today, and they didn't disappoint.
They did not. So we want to share this with you guys almost as much as we want to share this week's episode. So with no further ado, let's get right into it.
Yeah, should we give a cheers to this week's survivors?
Let's give a cheers. So my cheers this week is for the survivor, Callie and Dino. Before I jump right into it, I just want to throw out a quick content warning. There are mentions of the details surrounding a mass shooting. So if you're sensitive to that type of content, please feel free to skip ahead or listen with your own discretion, and feel free to move along if you need to. So on June 12th, 2016, Callie Andino and her longtime friend Luis Omar Ocasio-Capo, which if you're following our social media, you can actually see. I've got a couple of pictures, courtesy of time.com. I got a lot of my images from time.com. Some of them are from Snapchat directly, but you can see images that Callie and Luis essentially grew up together.
Yeah, when you say long time, they were childhood friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Childhood friends, I think, is the best way to describe it. So on that night, they decided to go out to a club, and they went to a club that they had never been to before, but it was hosting a Latin night. So they wanted to go out, and for the most part, it was a normal night. They took selfies. This is actually if you're seeing the images, they took a selfie and posted it to Snapchat right before they went out, and it was just a normal, average night. So Pulse Nightclub was the club that they chose to go to that night. And it was an extremely well-known club in the area. It was known for being popular with the LGBTQ community. They had different theme nights on a regular basis. So all around, it was just a fun place that everybody liked to go. So that night was just like most. The club was packed. It was full of energy. Club goers were dancing to Latin themed music and enjoying the overall atmosphere. Around 2 a.m., everyone was confused by what they thought was fireworks or maybe even backfiring in the music. But that night, Omar Mateen also decided to enter Pulse Nightclub. He brought a handgun and a semi-automatic rifle and began firing on the club goers when he entered. By the time he was done, he had made 911 calls to the police. He had claimed ISIS. And he had killed 49 clubgoers and injured 53 more in what became the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history up until the Las Vegas mass shooting that happened in 2017.
Terrible. Those semi-automatics are so... Ugh.
It's rough.
They're rough. They do a lot of damage in a short amount of time.
And unfortunately, when he entered the nightclub, it was so condensed and packed with people, and it was so congested with just bodies that when he opened fire, he was hitting people right off the bat.
He didn't even have to aim.
Correct.
He could just wave it.
Correct. And I did actually read statistics after they finished the autopsies and investigation of the scene. There was, I think they said like a third of the individuals had been shot in the head. So he was close, and within a 3-foot distance. So he was close enough. And many...
Was he high up shooting? Just out of curiosity.
No, he walked into the club. Now, there seems to be different levels of the club in different rooms. So he may have had different vantages depending upon where he was.
Just thinking out loud, but depending on his height, you would have to, like, have the gun like this, or he was just a tall human.
Yeah.
Because you normally shoot your gun from, like, your shoulder.
I don't know all the details of the ballistics, but he hit people multiple times, and it was so packed he was able to hit people right off the bat and in large numbers. And unfortunately, when he stormed in, it also caused chaos. So people didn't know first what was going on, and then once they started seeing their friends and fellow clubgoers being shot, they didn't know how to react other than to get away. So people found hiding spots in bathrooms. Some people did escape out of back doors. There was a bodyguard who immediately recognized the shots because he was a military vet. And he actually helped like 20 people get out of a back door because he recognized it and jumped into action immediately. Callie, never being to Pulse nightclub, it being dark and the music still going and the spotlight still going, was at an extreme disadvantage. Although she was able to hide behind a bar, she was shot twice. Once in the back and once in the arm. Her friend Omar, at just 20 years old, became one of the youngest people killed that night.
Oh, so sad.
Omar Mateen's violent attack and subsequent shootout with the police lasted about 3 hours total before he was finally killed by police fire. In that time, Callie and the other stunned and terrified clubgoers were forced to hide the best that they could and somehow continue to shield themselves from bullets that were coming from everywhere. And Callie had to do so even being injured and bleeding. So once the survivors were able to be retrieved and checked, she was rushed to the hospital to begin her recovery, and she was one of the lucky ones that lived. Some individuals who survived the initial attack did unfortunately pass away at the hospital, which increased the death toll. So a year following the shooting, Callie was actually interviewed, and she was quoted as saying, "This past year has been the hardest year of my life." This, if you're seeing our visuals, this is actually her at the grave of her friend Luis, and this was only 8 months later.
You can still see just the pain in her face. It's so sad.
And to be a survivor of this is one thing, but to survive and have your friend not survive and one night just change your
childhood
whole life.
Friend.
Exactly.
Someone that it's at a point where it's like a family member. So when they're gone, your normal's changed.
It's incredibly devastating. And she had 3 different surgeries and physical therapy 3 times a week for the whole year following. Afterwards, at that point, she could just then start moving her fingers and picking up small objects. So her injuries were so severe that the physical toll remained well after the initial attack. She did say, "The healing process has been hard. It's like you're starting all over again." But despite her difficult recovery, she hasn't lost sight of her plans at all.
Good.
She was also quoted as saying, "I'm still going to college, and one day I want to own my own business. What happened to me is not going to stop me from becoming somebody in this world." And that is the incredibly inspiring story of Callie Andino, who overcame one of the most horrible events in our history and came out still driven to be someone in the world.
She didn't let it define her. I think that's just some of the most powerful when you find survivors like that who
Yes.
they more use it as like a push, as like a, well, I did survive this and my friend didn't, and now I'm going to make something of myself, because he'd be disappointed if I didn't.
Exactly.
Not putting words in her mouth. But.
Right. But I mean, just essentially, she's really making her friend proud. And I think she should be very proud of herself for being so incredible.
She should. 100%.
So, cheers to Callie and
Cheers
Dina.
to Callie. That was really good.
Thank you.
It's going to be hard to follow. I'm gonna give it the good old college try though.
Yes, and I'm excited for yours, because although it's not quite true crime, this story is badass.
It's about a survivor for sure.
And nobody dies.
Nobody dies.
So spoiler, nobody dies.
Nope. And it's a very well-known story, but it's had a couple years to cool off from the hype, so I think it's kind of a nice one to round back to. And my story is about Erin Ralston. I want to start off by citing my sources. I got a lot of great information from allthat'sinterestings.com article on Erin Ralston, as well as actually the movie 127 Hours. Normally, I wouldn't go off of a movie, but Ralston was actually quoted saying that the movie was so well done, he felt like it could be a documentary. So Erin was a college student at Carnegie Mellon. He studied mechanical engineering, French, and piano.
Wow.
Yeah, very smart guy. And once he graduated, he spent 5 years in the corporate world before deciding that this actually wasn't his thing. This is not what he wanted to do. He wanted to focus on his love for mountain climbing. So he decided to quit it all and he moved to Colorado. His overall goal was to climb Denali Mountain, which is located in Alaska, and it is the highest peak in North America, standing at 20,310 feet tall.
Wow.
So the shit's tall. Not to mention it's in Alaska, which the weather there is just crazy.
Obviously frigid.
Frigid, yes. Ooh, I love that word, frigid. But if you're looking at our visuals, something that you will notice is that it's not your, very beginner drawing of a mountain where it's just like a triangle. It is very... tons of points. I wouldn't even think it's that tall as they say it is, because it's so wide and it literally has a ton of points.
It just looks like the most high level, I would say, hike. Or mountain climb.
It's one of those that, like, if I was in this green valley, again shown in the picture, I'd be looking up and be like, that is beautiful. But I never thought, I'd love to climb that.
Right.
That looks fun.
Right.
Fuck no. So, but that was his overall goal. So to achieve that, he was going to climb all of Colorado's 14ers, or in other words, a mountain that is 14,000 feet or taller.
Wow.
He wanted to be able to achieve this solo and in winter, which is something that's never been done before. So again, striving to be the best out there, an obvious overachiever, doesn't let anything hold him back. So in February of 2003, Ralston was country skiing on Resolution Peak in central Colorado with two friends. As they were skiing, they actually got caught up in an avalanche to where Ralston was buried to his neck.
Oh, man.
It took his friend to bury him out, and then it took his other friend, or it took both of them to get their third friend out.
Wow. So all three of them almost died. They were put in a very dangerous situation. I didn't hear about the first friend who was able to get him out,
But that sounds what changed it.
Yeah.
If that first friend would have been buried as well, they possibly could have died. So while no one was seriously hurt, this event could have been avoided, and there is some controversy on this because a severe avalanche warning had been issued that day, and if they would have checked, they probably would not have been caught up in it.
Oh, man.
And if you're like me, and you're like, how the hell can they have an avalanche warning? I didn't think that was possible. It is an actual thing. There are websites that I was actually able to visit that showed me the avalanche possibility for like the day. Like you see here in Oregon, the fire.
Yes.
You know, warning or wherever like fire level is on. That's what they kind of have for avalanches.
Wow. I didn't know that either.
I didn't either. So again, some people are like, this could have been avoided, but Ralston just, he's experienced in this stuff. So for him, this is like saying, I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to go country skiing, or I'm going to climb a mountain is second nature to him.
This is his thing.
Yeah. So after this, you would think he might be a little more cautious going forward, or like me, I would just fucking quit in general. But again, I don't have a passion for mountain climbing.
Right. But
that just wasn't his style. He continued climbing and exploring dangerous places and doing it completely solo. So this is his like me getting space and reading a book by myself. This is what he does. This is his piece. So on April 25th, 2003, Ralston decided to go to Canyonlands National Park, which is located in southeast Utah. He drove during the night, and so he decided to camp in his truck, and he slept until about 9:15 on April 26th, which was a beautiful Saturday. He then climbed on his bike and started a 15-mile trek to the Blue John Canyon. Yes, 15 miles. That's...
Wow.
That in alone is my day activity. My week activity, let's be honest. But a little bit about Blue John. It's an 11-mile long gorge that in some places is only 3 feet wide. If you are claustrophobic, this is not for you. And you can see in the movie, it's wild what he does. I mean, he has his back up against one side of the canyon with his feet and his hands, and he's like, in the best terms, like spider crawling.
Oh my goodness.
Through it. Yeah, so crazy. And this is something that was notated in the movie, and I later confirmed from like answers.com. Someone said they read the book and then confirmed that this actually happened, because this was not in the original article that I kind of cited all my information from. So as he was heading into the gorge's opening, he meets 2 girls who are lost, who are trying to go to another site, which they call the Dome. He says, I can take you there, like kind of tries to confirm with them that he's not some creepy guy that's just, you know,
finding ladies,
which he even states in there is Canyonlands is a really great place to go if you do not want to run into anybody else. So they were kind of weirded out. They were seeing him, but they eventually agree, and he takes them to the place that they were going. So it kind of delays his climb and his hike into the gorge. So he finally gets back to the Blue John Canyon, and it's about 2:45. So he descends into the canyon, and while descending, a giant rock above him slips. He then falls. His right hand is lodged between the canyon wall and an 800-pound boulder. And even, it's not even like right hand, it's like his lower arm up to his
elbow.
I couldn't think of the fucking word.
His weenus.
Wow, his weenus. So he is now 100 feet above the desert floor and 20 miles from a paved road. And if you're looking at our visuals, I'm actually showing a picture of that boulder. So what you're seeing here is that's where he's lodged, right there. So immediately he starts screaming for the 2 girls he just met, hoping that, you know, they'll hear him, because they're the only people he's seen. He has not told anyone of his plans other than the 2 girls he just met. And to do this climb, he didn't bring anything that would signal that he was trapped below the surface.
Oh my goodness.
So he's sitting there. No one else knows that he's here. No one else. And all he had was 2 burritos, candy bar crumbs, and 1 Nalgene-sized bottle of water. So immediately the feeling to fight and to survive kicks in, and he grabs this multi-tool that he has, and it's, like pliers and knives and like a file, like a camping multi-tool.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to chip away at the boulder, hoping that he can finally chip away enough that he can slide his arm through. He goes through a lot of issues, like dropping the multi-tool and then having to find a stick to grab it, and then he, eventually ties it onto himself so it can't happen. But it's a lot of these little things that while you're rushing to trying to save yourself, things are happening. So while he's doing this, and because he's using so much energy, he becomes exhausted, and he also is really trying to ration out his water, but it's running out. So at this point, his arm is lodged, and his 2 legs, he's using them, and you can again kind of see it in the visual. There's like a ledge right there. Mm-hmm. He's holding himself up with his legs because his arm's lodged, and if he, in my mind, that breaks and you're hanging there. So he's using his legs, but he decides that he's going to pretty much create this like harness to be able to sit in so that he can give his legs a break. So he starts throwing up what I have on my paper as climbing rope, because I do not know the name for it and I should have looked it up, but it's it's not even rope, but it's like the wide, cable's not the right word, but it's what they use in climbing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say, right? So and I'm sure you guys will tell me what I'm trying to say, but he throws like
straps, I would call
straps, them. Yeah, straps is a better word. He's throwing them up, and he eventually gets it hooked on like a rock above him, so he is able to create a harness and give his legs a break. So he's able to make it so it's the right height to where his arm is lodged, but he's also just kind of hanging there. So in the movie, as Sunday morning is rolling into the canyon, he starts kind of having visualizations or flashbacks of like camping with his father, and you can kind of see that that's what first gave him this taste of adventure and watching the sunrise, because as what's going on in the canyon is sun's finally hitting the canyon, which he later states only happens for 30 minutes of a day. So he's kind of having a flashback. And even though he starts taking in the surrounding season, he starts to realize that he might actually die here. He might not live. So at this point, he starts making a video that he hopes someone finds to give to his parents. And I actually have the beginning clip of it. And I got this off of YouTube, and you can watch more footage there. If you search Aaron Ralston footage, actually quite a bit shows up. So here that is.
My name's Aaron Ralston. My parents are Donna and Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
So in that video, you can kind of tell the exhaustion, kind of losing hope at that point. And a little bit further on, I'll talk about some guilt also is starting to kick in. So he starts, again, he grabs his camera, he takes pictures of himself. And if you're looking at the visuals, this is a picture he actually took of himself while he was stuck. And as he's trapped, after he films this video, he starts thinking back to before his trip. And so he remembers a phone call that his mom had made to him, and he was just kind of like getting out of the shower, but not really making an attempt to answering it as he's hearing her leave a message on his voicemail. So he's not really reaching for the phone. So he thinks back to that. He thinks back to a conversation with a colleague he had at work named Brian, and all the opportunities he had to tell him where he was going. It even in the movie shows a scene of him copying the map obviously very aware of where he's going. And Brian asks, oh, like, where are you going this weekend? And he said, oh, I don't know, somewhere in Utah. So he thinks back to the phone call and back to his calling and realizes, I could have told someone where I was going. Because as he's trapped here, he knows there's a very small possibility of someone walking up on him. And he should have told someone where he was going, basically. So he still at this point hasn't given up. He continues to try different things to free himself. He even tries to make a pulley system to where he can move the boulder himself. So again, very smart guy.
Yeah.
And he's trying absolutely everything. With all these attempts, though, he starts getting more and more thirsty. And then in the movie, it shows him thinking back to the Gatorade he left in his truck. Just all the things he's starting to get really, mindful of all the mistakes that he's made. Mm-hmm. And he starts almost visualizing and pretending that he's going there and grabbing it and drinking it. That's kind of where his mind is going. So he's stuck, he's alone, he's afraid, and he's almost out of food and water. He at this point is where he's like, I need to cut my arm off. There's no other way that I'm going to get out of this. So he starts making tourniquets, and he uses that multi-camping tool, and he later states that it's something he got free with a $15 flashlight. Like, it's obviously not
just a Harbor Freight.
It's not the best. Yeah.
Oh.
But he starts trying to test its sharpness, and so he's trying to do superficial cuts. And in the movie, you can see that, like, it's not even, it's like a butter knife, basically. It's not even, it's barely making scratches. Yeah. So at this point, it's now Tuesday. So again, he fell in Saturday.
Oh, geez.
So it's now Tuesday, and he's actually out of all of his water. And he really believes that he's going to die. And so he goes back to his video, and he starts to tell his parents how much he loves them and kind of apologizing for his selfish tendencies, not answering the phone more when they call, not keeping them more up to date with his life. So he's still trying everything, and now he's wondering, okay, it's not working on my skin. Would it even be able to cut through bone? Is there a way that I could get it to cut through? So he just straight up stabs himself.
Oh my goodness.
Which gets through the surface, but it confirms to him that this knife, this multi-tool he has, it's not gonna cut through bone. So now that he's out of water, he's still thirsty, and he starts to drink his own urine. Vanessa's just like nodding her head with pursed lips. It's rough, and when you watch it in the movie, it's, that's honestly, having kids, I deal with a lot of bodily fluids, but my least favorite is pee.
And just to be in that mindset where you're like, at that point, you're like, this is literally what's going to keep me alive.
I have to do it.
Yeah.
I have to do it. I have to keep something in my body. So now he thinks I'm going to die. He comes to terms with dying. He starts using that tool he has to carve his name and his estimated time of death, and also RIP. So he's trying to leave as much information as he can, and he tries to fall asleep and go peacefully.
Oh, jeez.
But it was actually a dream that ended up sparking something in him. And he actually calls it a premonition. So as he goes into a dream, he actually sees himself with only half of his right arm and with a small child, and they're playing. So when he woke up, he took this as a sign that he had to start fighting again. The thought of having a family and having a chance at life. And I think just visualizing himself without that lower arm, to him said, it is possible, I can do this. So this next part that I'm going to read is pretty much word for word from that'sallthat'sinteresting.com article, because it's medical and I'm not the most medical minded person, so I wanted to get word for word of what he actually did. But when he woke up from the dream, he had a thought. And the thought was, I don't have to cut this off. I can break it. And in the movie, you see James Franco give a slight smile, and this is something Ralston actually hounded them about. He said he has to do this, and he believed that James Franco did it perfectly. So, using the torque from his trapped arm, he managed to break his ulna and his radius.
Oh.
After his bones were disconnected, he fashioned a tourniquet from the tubing of his Camelback water bottle and cut his circulation off entirely. Vanessa right now is covering her mouth. This is the part in the movie I cannot watch. I have to look away. It's so bad.
A fun fact.
Okay.
I was obsessed with learning about the human body, specifically skeletons, because I wanted to be a forensic anthropologist as a child.
Right.
So everything you are saying, I know.
You can feel it. It's does not get better from here.
Okay.
It's not good. So then he was able to use the cheap, dull 2-inch knife that he's been using this whole time, and that's just crap, to cut through his skin and muscle. And then he uses the pliers on the multi-tool to cut through his tendons. Yes. He purposefully, though, left the arteries for last because he knew once he cut those, he had very little time. Mm-hmm. In his video, as he's like riding his bike, the guidebook says that to get through this gorge, it takes 4 hours and 4.5 hours. I'm going to do it in 4. I'm going to cut time off of that. So we kind of have an idea of how long it's supposed to. He's just at the beginning. This happens at the beginning. How long he has to get through this gorge. After all this.
Lopping his own arm off.
Yes. So a direct quote from Ralston from a press conference. He says, "All the desires, joys, and euphorias of a future life came rushing into me. Maybe this is how I handled the pain. I was just so happy to be taking action." Because again, he felt, before he had that dream, he felt like he exhausted everything.
Yeah.
So this whole ordeal, from him breaking to cutting his tendons, lasted for an hour. And he lost about 25% of his blood.
Oh my goodness. So he's also running out of energy because he doesn't have any more blood.
And he's dehydrated and
Oh my goodness.
So then adrenaline and the need to live kicked in. Ralston was able to climb out of the canyon. And even as he comes out of the canyon, there's a sheer cliff of about 65 feet that he has to rappel down. Yeah.
Okay.
He has all the gear.
Yeah, okay.
He's set on that. But
just with one arm.
With one arm.
And just cutting his arm.
Yes. So he was actually able to hike 6 out of the 8 miles after doing all of this back to his car, and while being severely dehydrated, losing a large amount of blood, and with only one hand.
Oh my goodness.
At mile 6, Ralston stumbled on a family visiting from the Netherlands who obviously got a little bit more than they expected.
Oh my goodness.
They gave him Oreos, water, and they were able to alert the authorities. The Canyon officials had actually already been alerted of Ralston's disappearance, which is interesting. I think maybe he may have mentioned, or maybe Brian, his colleague, knew the area well to kind of know that that's where he would be. So they had been alerted, but they had been searching for him by helicopter. They're not going to see him because he's below the surface. And he also is very aware that when he's trapped, he was actually a volunteer on like rescue teams for this kind of thing. So he's aware, and you hear like this monologue that James Franco gives himself. Basically, he knew that on Tuesday was his first shift back at work. So he doesn't show up. He knew that even if Brian decided to take action and file a missing persons report, that's his first, the police's first hearing that he's missing. They're going to wait 24 hours before they take action. So while he's in the canyon, he knows that really the only chance of anyone starting to look for him starts Wednesday. And he thought he was going to be dead. But again, they had helicopters, so people were very on alert and they were ready to rescue him once they got that phone call. So only 4 hours after amputating his own arm, Ralston was saved by medics who called the timing kismet. If he would have done the amputation sooner, he most likely would have bled to death trying to reach his car because he probably wouldn't have run into people.
Oh my goodness.
Had he waited, he probably would have died in the canyon. So, after his rescue, park rangers went back to retrieve his arm. Now, remember that pulley system that he created? So what you're seeing here, if you're looking at the visuals, is this is his creation. This is what he did. That's his harness, and this is his pulley system. So that pulley system that he thought, oh, I could pull this off of me. Well, it took 13 rangers, a hydraulic jack, and a winch to remove the boulder. And they didn't even pull it all the way out. They just removed it enough so they could get the arm.
Oh my goodness.
They cremated the arm, and they returned it back to Ralston. 6 months later, he returned to the very spot and scattered his arm's ashes where he said they belonged.
Oh my
I know.
goodness.
I'd be like, you cannot get me back there.
Wow. And if you are looking at this visual, I am...
She's shook.
I am shooketh.
Yes, you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay.
So,
sorry.
like I had already mentioned, this story obviously got national attention because it's crazy and was turned into the movie 127 Hours. I do just want to say, because, you know, thinking of a movie created in my life, which would be so boring, but going in and, like, critiquing it and being like, that's not what actually happened, what I think is really cool about this movie is how much Ralston loved it. And he, like I said that that movie could have been a documentary, and he really felt like James Franco did it justice, and even so much that he said he felt the same emotion while in the canyon as he felt while James Franco recreated it.
Wow.
So really well done. Really well done. So the premonition that Ralston had while stuck in the canyon actually came true.
Yay.
He met his wife 3 years later, and they had their son, Leo. So while his wife and him didn't actually make it, they ended up getting a divorce. Ralston still feels like his premonition is 100% true. He says that he loves his son, and he is constantly learning from him every day. So his love for climbing didn't stop even after all this. In 2005, he became the first person to climb all 59 of Colorado's 14ers. He did it in the winter, he did it solo, but he added a little extra, and he's the only person to do it with only one hand.
Wow.
And that is the story of Aaron Ralston.
Cheers to Aaron Ralston.
Cheers to Aaron.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Survivor's Cocktail, Subsist Fizz. We are so excited to bring you this episode and additional content and episodes every week, but we do need your help.
Go like, review, share, subscribe our social media accounts. Also find us on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. And always remember, survive and thrive, ladies and gents.